When setting out our gardens, there are things that we all consider. The shape and design of the borders, flower combinations, even adding a few wigwams for height and structure. But you know, there's one thing that so many of us miss out on in our gardens, and I think it's fundamentally important: scent.
Scented plants have played an important role in British history, from the fragrant herbs that arrived with the Romans to the aromatic flower gardens of the Middle Ages. But where are those sweet smells today?
These sweet peas are glorious, and their perfume, oh, it's sensational. And that's something that's been lost from many modern cultivars, and not just in sweet peas. And that's why I think we need to make our gardens fragrant once again.
On my revival campaign, I'll be visiting the scented garden that was created to win the heart of a queen.
Today, if you fancy someone, you might buy them a bottle of perfume. Dudley grew it and put it in a garden.
I'll show you how to have fragrance wafting into your home with a window box.
You get months and months of time to enjoy all the aromas.
And I'll be holding the country's first ever scented flower competition.
It's got a bit about it, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, fragrance is important, isn't it?
Yeah. We all know what lavender and lily of the valley smell like, but they're just the start, because right under our noses is a whole world of beautiful, engaging fragrances to enjoy. I mean, some plants smell of cinnamon, others of nutmeg, there's sugary syrup, citrus, even plants that smell of bubble gum.
Now this is the beautiful University of Cambridge Botanic Garden, and within its walls is a whole garden dedicated to all the wonderful range of aromas that plants produce.
This is the aptly named Scented Garden, and it's like a perfume cabinet made of plants. All the fragrances are here, from the cloying aroma of lilies. It's a bit like sniffing a glass of tropical fruit juice. And there's sweeter aromas from the stocks, lemons and citrus from pelargoniums. There's even plants here that you don't associate with fragrance at all, but believe me, they have one. This is yarrow, and on rainy days, up from these felty grey leaves comes a fragrance that's just like disinfectant. Now, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really like it.
Flowers produce scent to attract pollinators. Different plants do this in different ways, but mostly it's by secreting oils.
Scent in our gardens these days is getting harder to find. I mean, take this rose. It looks like it's got everything. It's abundant and beautiful, but sniff it. There is nothing there. And this is the unforeseen consequence of breeding programmes that have prioritised flower colour and size and completely forgotten about fragrance.
But there are still roses, along with many other flowers out there, that do still smell delightful. And I want you to bring them back to our great British gardens. I'm starting my campaign at the magnificent romantic ruin of Kenilworth Castle. It once belonged to Elizabeth I's suitor, Robert Dudley, who transformed it into a Renaissance palace in order to woo his queen.
It doesn't take much to imagine what it would look like in its pomp, but there is one bit of it that's been restored to its 16th century magic, and it's this bit. Down here.
This splendid scented Tudor garden is a recreation of the original, designed by Dudley to impress Elizabeth on her many visits.
Oh, goodness. Isn't that incredible?
It was lost to the world for over 4 centuries until it was resurrected 5 years ago by John Watkins, who is head of gardens and landscapes for English Heritage.
How important was scent back in Elizabethan times?
Scent was very important because life wasn't sweet-smelling then, and so it was real luxury.
The thing that really strikes me about it that I just love is that today, if you fancy someone, you might buy them a bottle of perfume. Dudley, now he was the man. He not only had the perfume, he grew it and put it in a garden. I mean, it's extraordinary. God, it smells good. I can really smell the sweet rocket.
I think, yes, it's the Hesperus, and I think what's so nice about this is it's great colour, and you've also got scent at the right height.
Ah, that's important, is it?
Well, I think it's important. Those of us with bad backs, you've not got to bend right the way down.
Well, I'm all for it.
So it's just at the right height, and being so much of it, of course, it means there's plenty of scent waving around in the air, so it does scent the whole environment.
you have any favourites, John?
Well, I think something that's always special in a garden, the peonies. This one has quite an unusual scent. What do you think of it?
Oh, it's appley. Like a bowl of fruit.
Yes.
Fruity.
And just think, you know, a flower that size in the Elizabethan period and also with that scent, you know, surprising that didn't persuade the Queen, isn't it?
No, I'm surprised she didn't go for him in the end.
Obviously, she was no horticulturist.
Seeing and smelling the wonderfully aromatic plants here has really brought home to me how much scent we've lost from our gardens today. To try and get to the bottom of where all of our fragrant plants have gone, I'm visiting a nursery in Worcestershire where Jeff Caesar and his team grow over 1 million plants every year for the UK market.
How have we got into this state?
It's all about that the plant has got to look fantastic when you buy it.
Yeah.
A whole load of features that you're looking for in plants. They're all really important, and without some of those features, a plant won't sell. How attractive it is, how disease resistant it is, how hardy it is. Yeah. All of these things will come before fragrance.
Really, it's that far down the list?
Yeah. Fragrance is important, but it's not always the primary thing that a breeder's looking for.
So the fact that plants have lost their scent is an unforeseen consequence of the breeding programmes. No one wanted to do that, it's just happened.
Of course not.
But it's not all bad.
No, it's not all bad. Some plants that have been introduced in recent years have got fantastic fragrance.
Yeah.
Honeysuckle's being one of them.
If I'd come here, Jeff, and you'd said to me, nah, scent's not important, we don't sell anything with scent anymore, I think I'd have just wept.
It's really disappointing, wouldn't it? No, absolutely not.
I'm pleased to hear that there are still fragrant plants available, but there are so many heavenly scents that we could lose altogether if we don't get planting.
Now, it's not just the scented garden here at the University of Cambridge Botanic Garden that's fragrant. These are the systematic beds, and I used to work here, and I loved them because you can navigate your way around by your nose. You see, planted in each bed is a family of plants. Now, these are the labiates, the aromatic herbs, and then there's the potato family, grasses and orchids. You just close your eyes and you know where you are. It's a sort of heady mix of plants, cut grass and hoed earth. It's lovely. But if you're after something a little less subtle, a bit more in your face and sweet, I've got just the thing for you. And this is it. Jasmine, or Jasminum officinale. And it's got white night-scented flowers. Like many white flowers are scented at night because they're pollinated by moths. And it's an interesting fact that when you're sniffing around the plants in your garden, often the paler colours or flowers with less pigment in them, they have a more powerful aroma. It's as if the colour uses up some of the scent. Now, when I used to live in Cambridge, I had one of these beautiful plants growing on my shed. And I used to sit out of a night having a glass of wine and it just fill the air with its sort of tropical, sweet aroma. Now, how this one will grow is up the side of this shed, onto the roof, and the scent, due to the heat that's going to be trapped in the roof, pushing it and pulsing it out into the rest of the garden. It's just going to fill the air gloriously. Now, when it comes to planting anything, don't forget to put a handful of fertiliser in the planting hole. Just gives them that little boost to make sure they grow nice and tall. A couple of other tips. Notice how I haven't put the hole right next to the building. I've left a good space. That's because you want your plant to grow towards the structure, but not be in the dry soil right next to it, because the closer you are to the woodwork or the brickwork of a building, obviously the drier that earth is going to be. Another tip, climbers always like to grow towards the sun. And when you think about it in nature, they would grow on the north side of a plant and then aim up through the branches, up through the canopy, and then grow out through the top into the bright sunlight on the south side of their support. If you struggle, like I am, to get your plant out the pot, remember the old spade trick? Put your spade in the ground, just tap the pot against it like that, and it comes out relatively easy. Now, because this is grown in a container, as long as the earth isn't waterlogged or frosty, you can plant the jasmine at any time of year. And then put the nice moist root ball down into the earth.
The canes are just to support the plant in the garden centre, so make sure you remove them straight after planting. Train plastic wire through secured hooks and use loops of soft twine to attach the stems.
Most important of all is to give your plant a good drink once it's in the ground. A canful is what it needs, just to settle that soil around the roots. And it's important with climbers that you keep them well hydrated through their first year, just to help them establish and get down on their own roots. And if you do that and put that effort in the first few months you've got your plant, it will reward you with filling your garden with fragrance for years to come. One of the reasons why we don't appreciate fragrance in our gardens is because I think we don't understand it. And that's why I've come to meet a man who's turned the art of aroma into a science.
John Stephen is the chemist and perfumer at the Cotswold Perfumery, where he has a specially designed perfume garden. I'm hoping he'll explain to me the science of scent.
So tell me about your garden, John.
Well, in this garden, everything has been planted for its aroma rather than its appearance. Each flower will produce a different aroma, so every flower is its own perfumer, really.
And where does the aroma come from in a flower?
It comes from what's called an essential oil, and there are many, many materials in a flower. So if you're looking at a rose, for example, you're looking at about 700 components in it.
Yeah.
They're highly complex mixtures.
And these are volatile oils, i.e. they evaporate into the air when it's warm.
Yes, they must be volatile because we can only smell vapours.
And do you have any tips as a perfumer about how to appreciate scent? Is there anything that most of us are missing out on?
Well, you can assist yourself by improving what's called your odour memory. And your odour memory is being able to put words to what you smell and being able to recall it. Now, this is something we don't normally practice, but if you do, you increase your odour memory, a whole world opens up to you with fragrances because you have a much better appreciation of smells.
I like this idea of a workout for your odour memory.
Yeah.
Can you give me some tips on how to do it here? Is there anything that I can have a sniff of?
We've got a good example here with a rose, for example, where the fragrance does not come in the flower, but the aroma is in the leaf, and it smells nothing like rose. Now, I guarantee that you've smelt that before,
Yeah.
but you never will have associated with a rosebud. If you scrunch it up really tightly in your fingers,
Yeah.
throw the leaf away and just smell your fingers.
Sort of like apple skins.
It's apple. Yes, well done.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you are, you see, your odour memory is improving already.
I like this. This could turn into a good garden game, this.
Focusing on my odour memory has made me realise that it's all too easy to take fragrance for granted. It is high time that we all pay a little more attention to our noses. I'm back at Cambridge Botanics to show that if you don't have space for your own scented garden and want to bring fragrance into your home, then growing your own scented flowers from seed is simple.
One of the things I love about fragrant plants is their ability to paint a picture in your mind's eye of a time or place. And when it comes to painting a postcard of summer, annual bedding plants, well, they can't be beaten. I sow them every year. I've got some real favourites that are dead easy, will fill your garden with beautiful perfume, well, and cost no more than a pack of seeds. Sweet peas, they're always a winner. Now, the rule of thumb with these is that some you need to soak in water and others you can sow straight away. And you can tell often because the darker the flower on the front of the seed packet means the thicker the seed coat. With all seeds, it pays to use a good seed compost. Seed and cutting compost is different from the usual stuff you buy because it's hardly got any nutrients in it, because nutrients, particularly phosphates, inhibit germination. You just need a compost with good drainage. And then with your sweet peas, I've got a nice little pale variety here. All you do is scatter 4 or 5 to a pot onto the surface of the compost, space them out, so there's an inch or a couple of centimetres between them, and then just push them down into the compost up to my first knuckle on my finger, like so. Smooth out the top, and then pop your little potted sweet peas into some water to soak. With tiny seeds, it's slightly different. You fill your pots with compost in the same way, but pick off any lumps of peat or bark or little stone chips, because they will inhibit germination of any seed that touches them, and then smooth out the surface. And that's essential. The surface has got to be level, because otherwise the compost will sit wetter in some parts than in others. Now these are Nicotiana seeds, tobacco plants. They don't smell of much during the day, but at night, it's like your garden's filled with someone baking cakes. It's that sweet and sugary. Now, can you see how small that seed is? Now, if you can't see very well without your reading glasses, a good trick is to add a bit of sand to your seeds and just mix them together. Because when they're combined, it's so much easier to see what you're doing. And then, you sow your seeds onto the top. And as long as I paint over the top of the compost, covering it with the sand, I know the seeds will be evenly distributed as well. Now, it's always essential that they go in a water bath like this. Never water from the top, because otherwise the water is like a tsunami and just sloshes all the seeds to the side of the pot, where they sprout in crowded conditions and they could damp off or start to rot away. You keep your seedlings somewhere where the temperatures are nice and even, but they won't get baked and they won't get frosted. And after a couple of weeks, they're up and looking like this. Now, at this stage, they need to be potted on into individual containers in a process called pricking out. Now, this is always a bit of a game, and often gardeners love their plants to death by mucking about with them. The trick is, be prepared. Get all your pots ready, make a hole right down the middle with your finger, and then, this is the bit where so many people struggle, you've got to lever out the seedlings up onto the surface so you can get hold of them. Now, the name of the game with this is to handle the plants as delicately as possible, and you do that by just holding them by one leaf. And they come out with all the root intact. No, you've got to get that root down. So my trick is to get one of these pens, anything plastic will do, just create a bit of static on my trouser leg, touch it onto the root, and you see how it grips? That means you can drop it down into the base of the pot without it getting caught onto the compost. Gentle, firm rounds, a little tap, and then pop it straight back into some water. And really, it is as simple as that. You can have a garden that's just full of fragrance, and one that will be like a postcard for you to remember forever.
I, for one, can't imagine what it would be like to lose my sense of smell. But one man who knows only too well is Duncan Boak. After losing his sense of smell 9 years ago, he now campaigns to raise awareness of smell and taste disorders. I'm meeting him in a local florist where, sadly, he can't smell a single flower.
Well, Duncan, we're in a florist and it smells, well, floral and heady, but you can't smell a thing.
Not a thing, no. I lost my sense of smell in 2005 after suffering a severe head injury. And so the beautiful flower smells in this shop now, I don't get anything at all.
And did you value your sense of smell? Is it something you really miss now?
I never thought about the sense of smell. All of a sudden, I didn't have it anymore.
You see, I'm on this revival to get people to appreciate the value of scent in their gardens. Is that something that you think is important since you've lost your sense of smell?
I think it's hugely important. Well, my parents have this beautiful garden in Shropshire, and I can walk around that and I don't smell the flowers. It's just flat. There's nothing there. I can look around and see the garden, but that's very clinical and cold. You don't feel it in the same way.
So aroma is connected to emotion?
Completely, yes. Our sense of smell is more closely associated with our emotion than anything else we have. We started a survey in October 2013 to establish the sort of quality of life impacts of olfactory disorders, and large numbers of people say how the pleasure that they once took from their garden has gone. People don't understand that, people don't realise it, but it really is one of those, you just don't know what you've got until it's gone.
Meeting Duncan has definitely given my campaign even more drive and purpose. And I've got an idea.
There are hundreds of garden shows across the country where flowers are judged in garden designs or bunched together and awarded for their artistic merits. But none, as far as I'm aware, where flowers are judged for their fragrance alone. But all that is about to change.
To help my revival and make people realise how vital scent in our garden is, I've decided to hold the country's first scented flower competition here at the Staffordshire County Show.
Ooh, an iris.
And I'm not short of entries.
It's got floral quality, but it's light, isn't
Yes,
it? It's
it
really
is.
lovely.
It's lupin arboreus.
But I think you're in with a shout here. Dianthus, oh, that's so special, isn't it?
My husband says they remind him of the dentist.
What have you got there?
It's a dwarf lilac.
It's quite,
Yes, it's been...
quite musky, isn't it?
It is. It's got a powerful presence, hasn't it?
Your wallflower. It's got a bit about it, hasn't it?
Oh, yes. Fragrance is important, isn't it?
Yeah.
To help me decide on the most perfumed plant, I'm enlisting the help of Judge Eleanor Griffiths.
Eleanor, you travel up and down the country judging floral competitions. Have you ever come across a fragrance category before?
No, I haven't come across a fragrance category
So why do you think that is?
because our criteria doesn't allow it. We're not allowed to judge on perfume.
But do you think it could work?
I think it should work. We've gone too much into colour and lasting quality, and perfume is important.
I'm hoping Eleanor's judging skills will help me make the final decision.
Goes into your nose when you smell it, doesn't it? That's a lovely lilac-y smell.
You're having to learn your judging all over again here, aren't you? The tricks of the trade. Well, we smelt all the flowers. Have you got a favourite?
Yes, I've got two that I like at the moment.
Thank you very much for coming along to this, the first scented flower competition. The strongest smelling plant is the dwarf lilac from Clive Plant. Congratulations, Clive. Well done. There's your cup. There you are. There you are, mate. Let's hold that one up. Yes, Clive. But that was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and it created a lot of interest, didn't it, and enthusiasm.
Do you think it could run and run?
Definitely. It's going to be a bench full next year. Great.
Well, I
great.
might enter myself. Now, these are the Mediterranean beds at the University of Cambridge Botanic Garden, and there are some real beauties when it comes to fragrant foliage. Now, this is a plant called Cistus ladonifera. It's got big flowers, yes, but its party trick is in the foliage and stems, because on sunny days it releases this sort of resin that's scented like hot cross buns that you've left under the grill a little bit too long. It's used in the perfume industry. God, when the sun breaks through the clouds, it is such a perfume, so redolent of summer holidays abroad.
I'm going to show you how you can have your own fragrant memories come flooding back day after day, simply by planting up a window box.
One of the things I've learned about gardening with fragrant plants is it's not just about enjoying them on their own, it's when you combine them that you create hybrid fragrances, almost like recipes. It really brings them to life. One of my favourites is this. Now, it's quite a rare plant. I mean, I've been growing it for years. It's called Zaluzianska ovata, and it's got sort of very resinous foliage, but it's these small flowers. They might be tiny, but my gosh, they pack a punch. They smell like those sherbet-like sweets you used to get as a child. And in the evening, they'll fill your garden and your whole house with that fragrance. Amazing from such a small plant. My next scented plant is a little more common, but none the worse for that. It's chocolate cosmos, a delicious thing, which does smell of chocolate, like dark chocolate with a twist of vanilla. And as long as you keep it fed and watered and dead-headed, I pinch off the flowers as they become spent, you get flower after flower after flower right through the summer. I'll have one either side of me, Zaluzianska. And this is a plant that I just love. It's a beautiful pelargonium that's also useful. They are wonderful just to rub and release the fragrance from, but they're also good for cooking, because what you do is you pick them off, and if you're cooking a cake, you put that under the batter before you put the batter in the oven to cook, and it imbues the whole cake with this wonderful chocolate mint aroma. My kids really love it. Now, next up, I've got another South African plant, like the pelargoniums. This is Nemesia, and it has a cherry Bakewell tart aroma, like sugared almonds, actually. A really lovely thing, and the beauty of this plant is that it's scented during the day. I'm going to squeeze him in there for a bit of height. Whenever you're making a planter, you need things that mound, some things that create a bit of height, others that spill down the front. The plants will find their own space. Now, the final ingredient of my floral recipe are petunias, which I just love. When you're choosing them for fragrance, unusually, it's the dark forms, particularly the purples, that have the best aroma. It's just like vanilla. Oh, a lovely thing. Now, the thing to know about fragrance is, often as not, if you can find a form of a plant with double petals, for example, you get double the scent. And so it is with this purple Tumberlina petunia. It's quite unusual looking, and it's very vigorous. But my gosh, it does have double the scent. So I'm definitely going to use one of these in on the edge, and to balance it up on the other side, going for one of these less scented but still lovely cherry cheesecake petunias. Let's find a little space in there. The time to plant up a window box like this is in the spring, and that way you get months and months of time to enjoy all the aromas. And they really are delicious and mouth-watering. And even better, there's not a calorie in sight.
Another man on a mission to bring fragrance back into our gardens is Thomas Broom, who is so passionate about scented plants that he runs dedicated workshops at Petersham Nurseries in Surrey.
The idea of the Scented Garden Workshop came about because we felt it was something that was being missed by the general public in gardens. If you rub the leaves, you'll get the smell of Turkish delight. I think it gets people smelling different smells and maybe things that they've never even considered about a certain plant, how it smells.
Coming here today has made me a lot more conscious of the smell and scent and how important that is.
There was a geranium that had some really exciting smells, one that smelled of cola bottles. How strange, how fun, you know. And so, yeah, of course, it's always lovely to just get a bit more experience and meet a few new plants.
For each person, smelling something is completely different. So, for example, this Mathiola incana here, to me, smells like cloves, but to others it might smell like honey. Here we have this pergola, which is covered with 2 intertwined wisterias, and you just get this burst of scent coming through.
The scented flower collection here at the nurseries also holds some personal memories for Thomas.
This one's called Madame Gregoire Stachelan, and the fragrance is a typical old French perfume, and it's very evocative to me because I remember this as a child being planted in my grandmother's garden. I think anyone who's not introduced scent into their garden should perhaps rethink and adding scent wherever possible or wherever they've got gaps, because there's always room for scent in your garden.
Gardening for fragrance offers a personal, even intimate way to enjoy your garden. Yes, there's things to enjoy in the here and now, but it also brings back happy memories from times in the past. If you garden for appearance alone, well, that can soon turn into the tyranny of keeping up with the Joneses. No, if a garden smells good, it is good, and that's good enough for me.
Across the series, our revival team are travelling the length and breadth of Britain, celebrating our gardens.
You couldn't draw, as a landscape artist, a more perfect picture.
Flowers.
Oh, that's knockout fragrance.
And plants.
This plant is perfect. That's going to get off to a great start.
Next, Tom Hartdyke flies the flag for tulips.
As a globe-trotting 21st century plant hunter, I love growing plants from all over the world. And there's one flower with petals as colourful as its history. And this is it, the glorious tulip. But over the last 50 years, the British tulip industry has almost vanished, and we've stopped planting them in our gardens. It's time for other spring bulbs to step aside and for all of us, to be planting the tumultuous tulip. On my revival, I will find out about the turbulent history of this plant that 400 years ago brought an economy to its knees.
People lost their homes, their livelihoods and their businesses over it.
I'll lend a helping hand to what remains of the great British tulip industry.
I left a lot to start with.
Oh dear.
And show you how to start your own tulip collection at home and make one of my family favourites, the tulip lasagna.
You'll have 8 weeks of flower, power, tulip heaven.
There was a time when our gardens weren't complete without tulips to brighten them up. In the 1950s, we even had our own tulip industry in the counties of Norfolk and Lincolnshire. But sadly today, that industry has all but disappeared. The tulip was once celebrated on our streets and in our gardens. It's such a shame that today they are seen as troublesome, hard work, and simply not worth the effort. Well, you try telling that to the gardeners here at Dunsborough Park in Surrey. They plant an incredible 10,000 tulips each year, all by hand. Some of these tulips are planted in formal rows like this, and some are planted randomly yet sumptuously within a meadow setting such as this. Whatever situation you've got, tulips will provide a kaleidoscopic range of colour in your garden, from early March right the way through to June. Sadly, we're in the habit of buying imported cut tulips from Holland instead of making them permanent residents in our gardens at home. And for anyone with a love of plants, that simply won't do. To start my campaign, I want to trace back the history of how this flower first took root on our shores. So I have travelled to Holme Pierpont Hall in Nottinghamshire. The gardens have played host to a variety of beautiful flowers, but I'm here for one particular wild resident that made its home in the meadow long ago.
Are you ready? You ready, everybody?
This particular tulip is the only relative of the garden tulip found growing wild in Britain, and it holds a very dear place in my heart.
It was at the age of 4 when my inspirational granny, she was an amazing horticulturalist gardener. She said to me, Tom, I want to show you something very special. I want to show you this tulip, Tulipa sylvestris from the southern Mediterranean. It was sensational to see it spurting out underneath a bit of shade in dry conditions on an east-facing aspect where Granny had her wonderful herbaceous border.
Tulipa sylvestris is rumoured to have been introduced to Britain by the Romans centuries ago, but we didn't start growing tulips in our gardens until the early 1600s. The first person to record them was botanist and herbalist to King Charles I, John Parkinson. I am meeting his descendant, Anna Parkinson, a fellow tulip enthusiast, to find out how this flower changed the way we gardened forever.
Anna, why is the tulip so dear to your heart? Why is it such a personal story to you?
The tulip heralded an age of decorative gardening. It was, if you like, a signifier of gardening as we understand it today, because up until that point, nearly every plant had a medicinal value, but the tulip had no medicinal purpose at all. It was just beautiful.
Is it fair to say that, together with others too, but John Parkinson was responsible for the ornamental gardens that we know so well today?
Yes, he was a pioneer of the decorative garden, and he learned from his Flemish friends in London about how to grow these decorative plants, and the tulip was the most desirable of all of them.
It's amazing to think that the tulip is so central to the history of our gardens, and yet it no longer takes pride of place. Anna has brought with her what is considered to be the first British gardening book ever written, in which her ancestor describes one of the most desirable tulips of all time.
So these are so-called broken tulips, and they were very rare because they didn't grow true from the parent, and they were highly sought after, and they triggered something called tulip mania in Holland in the 1630s.
These new variations of tulip species became referred to as broken due to the streaked colours of their petals. The rarity of the flower resulted in huge demand.
Within the space of a few years, it saw the price of tulips rise astronomically, so that within one growing season, a tulip would go to the price of a house.
And as quickly as tulip mania went to its peak, it burst, didn't it?
It collapsed. People lost their homes, their livelihoods, and their businesses over it.
It is incredible to think that broken tulips were once so highly prized, and I want to see what all the fuss is about. I have heard that there are some varieties still growing today in the Cambridge area.
I have never seen a broken tulip, but as a plant hunter, I am desperate to see this mysterious and exotic blossom. I feel a plant hunt coming on.
In order to track down horticulture's most wanted, I'm taking to the streets to see if anybody knows where it might be hiding.
Good afternoon, sir. I've got this mission. I'm a plant hunter. I go all over the world seeing plants in the wild, but I've heard here in Cambridge there is this plant. Have you seen this plant before?
I have never seen that plant before.
Where would you think in Cambridge I could find it?
Maybe in the common up there, I think.
I think if you go over...
I would say the market right there. I think there would be a...
At the Botanical Gardens. Have you been there yet?
No.
Of course. What am I thinking? The Cambridge Botanic Gardens. Britain's national collection of tulips are housed here, and Botanic Gardens director, Professor Beverly Glover, has agreed to show me what I've been searching for.
I hear, rumour has it, that here at the Cambridge Botanical Gardens you have one of the rarest broken tulips in the world.
So let me take you and show you. So this is our broken Captain Fryatt variety.
It's just horticulturally bonkers.
Well, you can understand where the tulip mania came from, can't you? I mean, they are spectacular, and just the diversity within a single pot. The unbroken tulip should be sort of this colour.
So you've got a couple of streaks in there coming in.
So it should be a sort of rich, winey colour.
The colour variations of broken tulips are actually the result of the tulip breaking virus that can infect any tulip, causing discoloration of the bloom and eventually killing the plant.
These are the only bulbs of it that we know of that are left, so we have the only
This
stock.
pot is the only pot of them?
That's right. We're not aware of it anywhere else. And so actually it's a bad thing for us that it's got the tulip virus, because we don't want to lose the line, and the virus obviously weakens the plants.
Wow.
Historically, the tulip was the main event in ornamental gardening, but nowadays they have fallen out of favour. However, that is certainly not the case here at Dunsborough Park, where Baroness Caroline Schwartz de Landers-Wyborg has been growing them in abundance for the past 20 years.
Now, when I look around here and see these amazing tulips, I do think of the workload that you've got. How many do you plant each year?
Well, we have roughly about 10,000 tulips every year. And of course they stay in the ground until June, when we lift them. And then they go to the meadow. And the new bulbs come end of October when we plant them in here again. So it's over 20,000 bulbs, really.
And you've got no wastage whatsoever?
No wastage whatsoever. And what's so fun about the meadow is that we literally throw them. Colour-wise, it's all mixed. So it's very formal in here, and that's how I like it. But it's also very wonderful to do the meadow, because
it's a wild look. It's a lovely wild look that you've got.
Absolutely wild look, yes.
This magnificent meadow is testament to how easy it can be for tulips to thrive in our gardens. Of course, they can also look spectacular indoors, and Caroline is passionate about cutting tulips from her own garden to brighten up her home. She's a bit of an expert at this, so I've asked her for a few tips.
I will do the baston and cut them very low, because I like the tall tulip.
And you keep the leaves? Now the leaves come off?
The leaves come off, and I do all the work in here with my little basket. And I will have an open one, and I will also have a closed one. And I will get about 20 of them to make a really nice display of my tulips. So this is the baston, and this looks really good.
So here we go. We're going to cut down here. Quite low down, right?
Yeah, quite low down.
Quite low down. I do feel awful doing it. I do feel quite sad. Peeling off the leaves. Keeping the top leaf?
sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes keep.
Sometimes.
Yeah, if we have enough space, then this would be perfect.
Okay.
Because the leaves should never be in the water.
By ensuring that no leaves are submerged in your vase, you will prevent them from rotting and making your tulips limp prematurely. However, you must make sure that your stems are underwater.
The moment they have no water, they really start to be very unhappy and hang. So they want a little bit of water every day, and you will have the tulip for a very long time.
So if you want to enjoy beautiful tulips in your home, don't buy them in the supermarket. Get planting and grow your own. These days, most of the cut tulips that we buy in this country are grown in Holland. And although the Dutch now dominate the tulip industry, this wasn't always the case.
Just a few years ago, this part of the world was covered in 3,000 acres of tulip fields. And the sad thing is, since the late 1970s, early 1980s, it's been reduced with a steady decline to almost nothing. Almost every single tulip field has disappeared.
I've travelled to the town of Spalding in Lincolnshire. It's known locally as South Holland, and the tulip has been celebrated annually here on a grand scale in the famous Spalding Flower Parade. But sadly, not anymore.
These are the remnants of the most famous tulip festival. And it's just sad to me seeing this. It's like a graveyard of floats rusting away.
With the decline of tulip production across Lincolnshire over the past few decades, the annual festival that was founded back in 1959 is no longer.
It's also quite eerie. It's quite sort of spooky. You just see this in such a short space of time, how these things are just being stored away and, well, they're just wasting away. I mean, there are just reams of them. There are room after room after room of these. Look what I found here. An absolutely enormous tulip. By picking this up, you feel you've just taken a bit of community spirit of Spalding. You just feel the passion and energy it's taken to build this, to build these extraordinary floats.
To find out more about the impact of the decline in tulip production, I'm meeting David Norton from the Springfields Horticultural Society.
What was it like in this area when tulips were at the height of popularity?
Well, there were literally hundreds of acres, and it was a patchwork of colour right across this area of the county. It was, back in the days of black and white TV, but in Spalding and South Holland, it was colour.
Tell me about the world-famous parade here. My granny came in the 70s to it and was really inspired by it.
At that time, she would have been, because that was at its heyday, at a time when the floats were at their biggest and looked most spectacular. They were fantastic in terms of the sculpture that they had and engaging the community.
How important is the tulip to the people of Spalding to this day?
It's still important. It's a symbol of South Holland. It's still an anchor in some ways to the past, which is sadly being lost.
Even though the decline in large-scale tulip production across the region has resulted in the loss of the parade, the tulip industry in Spalding has not yet disappeared completely. I've arrived at the Springfields Gardens, where multitudes of glorious tulips are in bloom, and John Taylor is here to tell me more.
John, I remember growing up as a youngster getting Spalding bulb catalogues in the post, and you said and thought the word Spalding, you thought of tulips. Is it still true today that tulips are thriving in Spalding?
Thriving's perhaps not quite the right word, Tom. It's changed. I mean, there is no longer the fields, as you know, and that's one of the things, but there is still a lot of work involved with tulips. There's tulips that are grown under glass for cut flower. There's tulips that are packed for sale for the gardens.
I'm so pleased to hear that. I'm relieved. I was getting a bit worried today.
So the tulip industry may be smaller, but it's still here.
Is there optimism for the future?
Yes, certainly. I see the tulip as still being a wonderful article that's going to be going, I think, for many years. The range of colours, as you've already said, it varies in shape, size, colour. I don't think there's another bulb that can match it.
Phew. Thank you.
Inspired by these beautiful gardens, I'm taking my revival to the streets of Spalding to get the locals fired up about growing tulips at home.
Right, I'm ready. I've got my hat, I've got my apron, I've got my market stall. All I need now are some tulips.
What could be better than these British-grown beauties?
Ladies, you look like tulip fanciers. What do you think of these two?
Lovely, aren't
Do you promise me if I give you some of these tulips that you'll plant them in your garden?
I will, I'll do it when I get home.
There you go. Put them in water straight away and they'll last for days for you as well.
Yeah?
Let's make it free.
You're a star, thank you.
My tulips are flying off the stall.
Oh, thank you.
OK, a couple of bunches within that.
Ooh.
OK, go on, what colours do you want?
I've got enough hands.
That's it.
Oh, crikey, thank you so much.
See you later. Good luck, ladies. Keep growing those tulips.
We've had a fantastic day here in Spalding. I really feel that my tulip revival is well and truly underway. But what about the rest of the country? Well, I tell you what, that's up to you.
Of course, tulips only flower for a few weeks over the spring months, but don't let this put you off planting them at home. I'm back at Dunsborough Park to show you one of my favourite planting techniques that is perfect for even the smallest of gardens and maximises the time that you can enjoy these beautiful blooms.
My favourite way of displaying tulips in a container is using a technique called bulb lasagna, a layering system of bulbs in the container to maximise the duration of flowering performance.
In order to cook up my quirky take on this Italian classic, you will need some broken crockery, 3 varieties of bulbs, some compost and some grit. The best time to put this dish together is around November or December in order to ensure spring flowering.
First of all, to aid drainage, we're going to add a couple of bits of broken crockery here. This side up, not that way where it collects water, this side up, we're going to place 3 or 4 sections. Remember that tulips do not like too much water. They rot so easily.
To ensure good drainage, use a compost mixed with horticultural grit. I'm starting with a base layer of about 6 or 7 inches.
The first layer of bulbs that we're going to put in are the latest flowering bulbs, and they're also the tallest bulbs. These particular varieties are Golden Apple Dawn and Blushing Bride. When you're planting your bulb, fairly obvious with this one, you're planting it with the growing point going up and the root developing at the base that way up. However, when you're planting them extremely dormant, it can be difficult to tell which way round to plant them. If you're unsure, the best thing to do is to plant your bulb on its side.
Once they're in, I add another compost layer of about 4 inches.
A nice big wad of compost in there.
Firming down lightly before my next tulip, Macarena.
The second layer is a variety that flowers just before the layer I've put in. So by doing this layering system, you maximise your flowering time. Now this layer, the aim is trying not to put them directly on top of the layer you've just placed in. 2 or 3 inches apart, nestling the roots into that lovely, smells great as well, lovely multi-purpose compost.
Now another good layer of compost, followed by my 3rd layer of bulbs.
And one more like this. Now for the final layer. This variety is called Concerto. It is my favourite tulip with a lovely open head of flower. And finally, as we approach the last point in filling up the container, and that's the slightly burnt, crusty brown cheese topping, which in Tom's plant world equivalent is going to be lovely crushed grit. Adds a bit of ornamentation to it. The main reason for me doing it, though, is just to reduce the build-up of moss and liverworts and annual grass seed germinating on it.
So there you have it, Tom's tulip lasagna. Add a sprinkling of water to get them started.
2 or 3 months' time, when they start bursting into bloom, you'll have 8 weeks of flower power tulip heaven.
For the next stop on my tulip revival, I'm in search of what is regarded as the last bastion of large-scale tulip production in Britain.
I'm on the hunt today for the last commercially viable tulip farm of an industry that was huge in this part of the world.
And here it is, Belmont Nurseries, just outside the Norfolk town of Narborough.
No words can describe this. 9 million tulips in flower.
This vast sea of colour is grown and cared for under the watchful eye of Mark Eaves.
Mark, I've been absolutely blown away by your mouth-watering, kaleidoscopic selection of tulips here. You think of tulip, you think of Holland, but here we are in leafy Norfolk. How comparable are you in size to the Dutch growers?
We're equivalent to a very large Dutch grower. There's not an awful lot of bigger growers than us. They specialise in different things, I suspect, but as far as growing the tulip, I think we're one of the largest.
To my surprise, the tulips in this field will not be sold as cut flowers. All the bulbs will be lifted and replanted under glass, where Mark can manipulate their flowering cycles, thus increasing the time he can supply supermarkets with cut flowers. But this does mean that these blooms are for the chop.
There'll be a bunch go home to the wife, but apart from that, no further of these flowers will actually end up in a vase.
So not one flower head is kept?
No, not one, not one.
And how many flower heads are we talking?
About 9 million in this one field. 37 million in total this year.
Mark, stop, OK.
By cutting off the flower heads at this early stage of bloom, all the plant's energy is focused into the bulb. And although the thought of beheading all of these spectacular flowers breaks my heart, I must do my bit for the great British tulip industry and pitch in.
Just a little bit of throttle.
Off you go. Go on, away you go. And then you look behind to see how many you're leaving.
It's a bit patchy, wasn't it? I left a lot to start with.
Oh, dear. And then you just need to look where they're falling in the path to make sure there's not too many bits of leaf in there. If there's too many bits of leaf, you're too far down.
It looks pretty good.
I think you're not bad.
Only a slight change in height and it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
That's cutting pretty well, isn't it? It is quite a sad feeling knowing I've just beheaded thousands of tulip flowers, but the bonus about this is the fact that when this tulip degrades and decomposes into the soil, it is going to put nutrients back in for next year's crop, so that's something. But it was quite a sad moment, actually.
Although it seems a shame to see all of this colour disappear, it is reassuring to know that it's all for the greater good.
Well, based on seeing this today with these 9 million flower heads, I think there's a place for it in this country. I think it's absolutely staggering.
Yes, yes, I'm proud to say it's British.
Yeah.
Species tulips and varieties, such as Tulipa Oxford, are happy to stay in the ground and thrive year after year. But many tulips don't like the wet and benefit greatly from being dug up and stored before being replanted. But don't let this put you off. I'm back at Dunsborough Park just to show you how simple it is.
One of the most important jobs is lifting tulips. Now, this particular variety here is Tulipa Pink Impression, and although they haven't completely died down yet, because we're making way for a summer bedding scheme here, these have got to be lifted, and you won't do any harm by lifting them in the green.
And that simply means that the plants are still in active growth.
Now, the first thing to do before you lift the tulip, with my handy pair of scissors here, is just to remove the spent flower head. Take it right down to above the first leaf and snip that off. Inside the flower head are developing seeds, and that's exuding energy from the bulb to produce these seeds. So by cutting that off, you'll at least preserve the bulb a little bit.
Once all your flower heads are removed, it's time to dig for your bulbs.
Now, I'm using a fork and not a spade to make sure I don't slice any of the bulb. I'm doing it from a couple of sides as well. And this is my favourite bit. I just love well-rotted manure and compost. God, that's an ingredient in itself. And look at this. You've got bulbils developing around the side. You've got a lovely swollen bulb. And
And I'm just going to shake off the worst of the soil and also some of the scaling on the bulbs, which has a bit of potential bacteria and so on. And you can see from one bulb planted last December how much this set has developed.
So having lifted your bulbs in late spring, it's time to store them until late autumn.
What I find is storing in cardboard boxes, absolutely fine. Try and space out your bulbs as much as possible so they're not all on top of each other. And you want to store them, if you can, in quite a dark position in the house. In an old cupboard would be fine, as long as you've got good ventilation around it. And you'll be amazed how quickly all the energy will be seeping from the leaves and the main stem into the bulb and really fatten it up for when you need to replant them again.
After around 6 to 8 weeks, you can remove the dead leaves and stems.
Then store them in potato sacks, or Mum's old ladder tights do really well. Hang them from the rafters of a cupboard, potting shed until December time. Very easy to do, but you will maximise your optimum flowering performance of your tulip if you lift them each year.
In the heart of Somerset, there is one farm that is already a champion of my revival.
The thing I like most about tulips is that they surprise me every year, so I have no idea what colour they're going to be when they come up because I've forgotten I've planted them most often.
Tish Jeffrey is the mastermind behind Britain's first and only pick-your-own tulip farm, which produced its first colourful crop just 3 years ago.
We started the business because we met some people who were looking for somewhere to plant some tulips. And because I'm a tulip lover, everyone else was going, what, tulips? I was going, yeah, we'll do it, we'll do it. Within 5 days, we got 100,000 tulips from Holland, and we set off in the near dark in mid-December and planted our tulips.
Despite these tulips originally coming from Holland, Tish has ensured that they are now a truly British crop, and people are flocking from miles around to pick their favourites.
We do grow tulips in our own garden, but I don't pick them because they look so lovely outside, so it's nice to come and pick these for inside the house.
I love them. They're beautiful. They come in so many shapes and colours, and when they're all together, they're so pretty.
I think everybody should grow tulips in their garden just because waiting for them to come out, looking at them coming out, when they come out, all of it is such a pleasure.
When you grow tulips, you are rewarded with an explosion of colour. Come on, Britain, let's plant our own piece of paradise and put the tremendous tulip back into our spring gardens.